books, what's up? I read 7 books this month, 2,053 pages. I participated in one readathon this month, which was the Book Buddy-a-thon readathon, and I read 4 books during that week alone. So I guess I'm just gonna go right into what I read because there's a lot. There's just a lot, I feel like. Okay. Oh boy, here we go. Oh, good start. Great start so far. First book that I want to talk about is What Dreams May Come by Richard Matheson. I gave this a 4 out of 5. It is about a man who dies and goes to heaven, and it's about him, and it's about his relationship with his wife, and she is still living. And I don't want to really talk too much about it. I don't really want to give too much of it away. I think that it has really great writing. It is really ultimately, even though it's about life after death, the story is really about love. It's unexpected in some ways. It was made into a film starring Robin Williams, so if you have seen the movie, you kind of do get the main plot points, but I think that if you don't know anything about this, it's best to go in blindly. Richard Matheson is famous for like horror / kind of sci-fi writing. So there's a lot of like sci-fi elements here. What I mean by that is the way the author wants to explain to you about the body and the soul and how you transcend these stages and how you get to this spot and what this aura means and the light force in this body means and how you become in heaven in this plane. And so it kind of becomes a little like telling about and the descriptions about how heaven works and like that kind of stuff I really didn't need to really know about. So that kind of like science description stuff I really didn't need. But if you like that kind of stuff, then you'd really love it. But even if you don't, like, I really don't care for it. There was a lot about the book that I really did like. And I loved the ending. And usually I don't really like gawk over certain endings, but I really thought this was perfect. And it really set the characters and you up for ultimately hope. Good book. Next book was also a book I read for the readathon, and it was Paper Towns by John Green. I also gave this a 4 out of 5. Also made into a film. I've not seen it though. Most people have probably read this book. It took me like this long to actually get to it. Plot point: a guy has a thing for a girl. They're in high school. She runs away and goes missing. She leaves clues for them to find her. And it's got this John Green charm, this appeal, this really fun aspect to it. The manic pixie dream girl as the lead character. I think the writing in this is really good. I liked it. It was fun to read. The one thing that bugged me about this book is, like, what is so great about Margot? Like, the one that goes missing, the one that runs off, and this guy's trying to find her. What is so great about her? Because literally in all the almost 300 pages of this book, I really couldn't find hardly anything redeeming about her. She just seems snotty and pretentious and selfish. So, like, the whole time I'm reading this book and I'm like, Q, why are you so obsessed with her? That aside, it was a fun book, and his books are always really fun and easy to get through. And I just always feel like that if I would discover John Green as a high schooler, I would have just loved him. Like, I really like him now, but I would have just loved him. I can totally see why, like, young adults love his books for the most part. Moving on. The next book I want to talk about is a book that I don't have because I lent it out to a friend and I didn't get it back in time. But you all should be familiar. I talked about it enough in my Book Buddy-a-thon wrap-up, which was A House at the Bottom of a Lake by Josh Malerman. I was able to pull an image up on my phone so you remember what the book looked like. It's pretty short. I think it's like 158 pages or something. And this book literally is about 2 high school kids who find a house at the bottom of a lake, and they like learn how to like dive, and like they have some scuba gear that they can use, and they just explore this house. And it's such a short book, and it is so anxiety producing and claustrophobic. Josh Malerman wrote Bird Box, one of my favorite horror books of all time. I read it last year during the fall, and it was just, I mean, his writing is awesome. He really puts you in a place. Like, I have this about like deep water and like it's the mysterious and the unknown, and the fact that these kids are like diving in this house and could any minute get like trapped in a room and die. Like, oh my god. And it's a really weird book. Like, it really has to be your cup of tea because the ratings on Goodreads are not good. I read it with all 3 of my other Book Buddy-a-thon friends, and we all gave it a 5-star. Like, we all loved it. Maybe it's just because it's our kind of, like, horror writing. It's our kind of weird, kind of unexplained. Like, okay, it's not a spoiler. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. You don't really find out what happens. Like, you don't really get it. Like, there's no, like, epilogue scene at the end of the book where the kids are in the library months later and they find an article and explains everything. Wow, how lucky we were able to wrap it up in the last 5 pages. It's just a weird slice out of these 2 kids' life. It's part of something that happens to them one summer, and that's the story. And don't expect anything else from it. It's just, the story is the experience of exploring and figuring out what the hell happened to them during this summer. And it's awesome. The very next book is The Circle by Dave Eggers. I gave this a 4 out of 5. And it's about a girl named May. She goes to work for this big corporation called The Circle. And it's kind of like Apple. It's kind of like Google. It's probably like Google, where it's a big company and it is mostly tech, but it is constantly trying to branch out and do other things to become more incorporated in their consumers' lives. But this thing, the company becomes like bigger and bigger, and they really want to get more of their consumer and more of your life and know more about you. And it's very like 1984, Big Brother is watching. Chilling, like it literally says chilling, prophetic, that for sure. These are the 2 ways to describe this book. I felt claustrophobic. I felt like I was being watched. I felt like there was this pressure all the time while I was reading this book. Like, I felt like I was constantly like being like hovered over. It was really good. It's pretty big. It's just shy of 500 pages. I read it pretty quickly. I would recommend it. I would also say that this book is satire. So it's really not talking to you that the circle is a bad thing, but the circle is a really bad thing. So that's where the satire comes in. Like, you as the reader are supposed to read this book and say, no, you're wrong. That is a bad move. Don't do that to your consumers. Don't do that to your customers. But as in the circle, it's, wow, we're really, really here to help our clients, and no, this is bad. It was a fun read. Next book is The First Time She Drowned by Carrie Clutter. I gave this a 5 out of 5. I've read really good books this month, as you can tell. I had a really good month. I'm really proud of that. This book, okay. It's a mental health book. I feel like I really need to just make a video about mental health books sometime. I have a lot to say about them. So it's about a girl who's been in a mental health institution for like 2.5 years. Not first off. If I ever make a video, I'm going to talk about that in another video. If you guys don't know, the ones that do know me, I don't know. I work in psych. Like, I work in a hospital. I'm a therapist. I work at a hospital where there's psych. So, a lot of these mental health books are hard for me to read because they're unrealistic, or they're too over the top, or they're just, no. This was the closest, like, most realistic mental health book that I've ever read. And so she gets out of the hospital, and that's it. That's the book opens with her in a hospital, and then she's discharged finally, and she starts college. So she goes and starts to live her own life. This thing was so beautiful and so well written. It was just a pleasure. It was a pleasure to read this book. At the center of this book is a severely toxic mother-daughter relationship. Her mother was a very sick woman, and it's just, those are some of the hardest books to read, but also some of the most, like, amazing books to read, because there's so much really at that relationship that can cause some severe damage for you when you're an adult. And I could totally see this relationship was so fleshed out, and it felt so authentic. I was just constantly amazed at every single scene that I was reading in this book that Clutter wrote, that it just felt authentic. It was really good. I will say the reveals in this book weren't revealing. Like, I wasn't shocked. I could see all the reveals coming, but that didn't really bother me too much because I was still able to experience the main character's realization of her truths and realization of her life and the things that were surprising for her. Because I think there were enough clues in this book for the reader to figure out what was going on before she did. So I don't feel like that I was really ruined by figuring out some things before she did. So that really didn't even distract from the 5-star rating. I thought this was a great book and I loved it. And that was one of the highlights of this month, I think. So here come the last 2 books in the month, which were big downers. The first part of the month was great, full of really high quality 4- and 5-star books. And then the last 2 books come and drags the whole average down. Thank you very much. The first book I read was All the Dirty Parts by Daniel Handler. I got an arc of this from NetGalley. And ultimately, I gave this thing a 2 out of 5. It's super short, like 140 something pages. And it's just about this high school kid who like has sex with everybody. And he masturbates all the time, and it's just like there's no plot really. I will say I gave it the 2 stars because I love Daniel Handler. I love his writing. I think he writes authentically and I believe what he writes, but I wish there's a couple parts where I thought the plot was going to go somewhere and it didn't, and it kind of was a little disappointment. There was like a conflict at the very end of the book, but it was resolved really quickly, and there was no point that it really existing. Like the rest of the book didn't matter outside of this one little conflict. And I think there was no meaningful change for the main character except to punish him. He was just punished by the end of the book and he didn't learn anything or change, and it was just kind of like a disappointing book. But I will remain on the Daniel Handler train. I know there's some gems out there and I promise to read them all because I really believe in you. Okay, finally I read The Trap by Melanie Robb. I think this is a 1 out of 5. I got this for free at a Goodreads giveaway. It's about an author who has not left her house in 11 years, and her sister 11 years ago was murdered, and she walked in on the murder and, you know, made eyes with him, and then he ran off and it was unsolved. And she's watching TV one day and she sees his face on television. He was like a journalist at a news place. And so that's the guy, and then so she formulates a whole plot to like get him to come to her house and confront him. Okay. It was so cliche. It was just so, like, the big thing is, the plot is set up to be, this is the killer. Either it's really him or it's really not. And when an author really pigeonholes the end of a book to be one of two endings, there's no surprise for the reader, because even if one seems a little bit more surprising and one seems a little bit more realistic than the other, the reader is naturally already preparing for 2 different scenarios. So when you do drop one of the scenarios on, there could be a moment of, oh my gosh, but there's no surprise. When an author leaves a book able to have multiple different endings and then one of those is chosen, I feel like that the reward, or the payoff for the reader is so much greater than pigeonholing into one of 2 possibilities. It was just so far-fetched, and she tried to pull these like surprising like shock moments and fake outs for the reader, but they just didn't work for me. They just didn't jive, and that was a bummer. So ultimately this book was a big disappointment for me. I've had it for a while and I keep thinking I'm gonna pick it up and really like it, and I picked it up and I ended up, I like the premise. I like the idea of a woman who's confined to her house, and I wish I got more of that. I wish I got more of someone when their life is that restricted and what their life is like, rather than trying to make this some big murder mystery solution, solving it, but I'm not gonna go to the police, I'm gonna figure it out myself. I don't know. I was disappointed big time by that one. So there's probably not really a purpose of showing you all the books because I'm missing 2 of them, but those are the 5 books that I read, plus the 2 that I don't have. If you guys are interested in the updating saga of where I am on it, I haven't made a ton of progress. I've had a lot of really busy evenings, but I'm on page 202. So, and I have quite a bit more to go. 202 is right here. So, maybe at the end of every video, if you care, I'll like let you know throughout June, like where I am with this book. So, alright, I'll see you guys later. Take care. Bye.